I found out my son was getting married from Facebook. Not a call, not a message, just a photo. White flowers, a gold arch, and my son smiling in a suit I'd never seen before. My chest tightened like I'd been slapped in public. I stood in my kitchen, the smell of burnt toast hanging in the air, rereading the caption, "Best day of my life." The wedding was happening at a lakeside resort I'd once driven him past as a kid. I remembered pointing at it, joking, "One day you'll marry a movie star there." I guess I wasn't invited to that movie. 2 days later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A video file. Before I could open it, a text came through. "You probably shouldn't watch this, but I think you should." The video started inside the reception hall. Crystal lights, soft piano music, laughter. Then I heard her, my son's mother-in-law, leaning toward the microphone, smiling too wide. She laughed and said, "Some people don't get invited because they don't belong in a better life." A few guests chuckled. Someone coughed. An awkward, heavy silence followed, so thick it felt like the air itself was embarrassed. Then the camera shook slightly. A man steps forward, tall, calm, the groom's best man. He cleared his throat and said, "Before we continue, I need to play something." The room murmured, confused smiles. My son looked uneasy. The screen behind them lit up. It was me, 10 years younger, working in night shift, hands cracked, uniform faded. Then another clip, me signing loan papers. Another, a bank transfer with my name on it. Dates, amounts, sacrifices. The music stopped. Gasps rippled through the room like a wave. The woman who'd mocked me froze, her smile collapsing. My son's face drained of color. The best man turned to the guests and said, "The groom didn't tell you who paid for his education or who sold their land so he could stand here today." Silence, then whispers, then shock. The camera zoomed in on my son, eyes wet, mouth trembling. That's when the video ended. I sat there shaking, my phone buzzing again. "There's more," the text read. "He still doesn't know everything about you." My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. Because if they thought that was the whole story, they had no idea who I really was. And this all started 22 years earlier, on a rainy August night, when I made a promise I never thought I'd have to prove. You believe parents' sacrifices should never be forgotten? Subscribe now. 22 years earlier. It was a rainy August night, the kind where the sky doesn't just fall, it collapses. Water leaked through the ceiling of our rented house, dripping into a steel bowl on the floor. Clink, clink, clink. That sound still lives in my head. My son was 6 years old. He sat at the small wooden table, legs swinging, trying to finish his homework under a flickering bulb. His school shoes were torn at the sides. I remember because I'd stitched them that morning with black thread, praying no one would notice. That night, I opened a letter that changed everything. School fee due. Final notice. I felt my stomach drop. My salary from the factory was already late. Overtime had been cut. I had $1,200 saved, money I'd hidden for emergencies. Rent alone would eat most of it. My son looked up and asked, "Papa, will I still go to school tomorrow?" I smiled and said, "Of course." That smile cost me everything. The next morning before sunrise, I walked to the land office in the rain, no umbrella, just the deed papers folded inside my shirt. That land was the last thing his mother left me, the only proof I'd built something in this world. By noon, it was gone. I paid the fees in cash. The clerk didn't look at me twice. That evening, my son ran toward me holding his report card, laughing, proud. I clapped, cheered, lifted him in the air, while inside, something broke quietly. Years passed like that. Extra shifts, missed meals, sold belongings, silent choices no one ever saw. And somewhere along the way, my son stopped seeing the man who stood behind him and only noticed the life ahead of him. I never thought I'd have to explain my love, but soon, very soon, the truth would walk into a wedding hall uninvited. The first time I realized my son was ashamed of me, he was 15. I had shown up at his school unannounced, straight from work. My uniform still smelled of oil and metal. Sweat darkened my collar. I didn't think it mattered. I was his father. I was wrong. I saw him across the courtyard with his friends. Laughter, easy smiles. Then his eyes landed on me. The smile vanished. I raised my hand to wave. He didn't wave back. Instead, he turned his body slightly, like he didn't want to be seen standing near me. One of his friends glanced my way and whispered something. They laughed, not loudly, but enough. I stood there, holding a small envelope. Inside was the money for his science trip. I had worked 3 double shifts for it. When he finally walked over, his voice was low and tight. "Why did you come here like this?" he asked. "Like what?" I said, confused. "Like this," he muttered, gesturing at my clothes. "You could have changed." Something sharp cut through my chest. I handed him the envelope. He took it quickly, eyes darting around. "Next time," he said, not meeting my eyes, "just send the money." That night, I didn't eat. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my hands. Hands that had built, carried, fixed, paid. Hands he now wanted hidden. After that, I learned. I stopped coming to school events. I waited outside gates. I sent money quietly. When parents were invited to functions, I made excuses. Work, I'd say. Too tired. The truth was simpler. I didn't want to embarrass him. Years later, when he got into college, he called me, not to celebrate, but to inform. "Don't come to the orientation," he said. "It's not your world." I agreed. What I didn't tell him was that the admission fee he just paid came from another sacrifice, one that would follow us both for the rest of our lives. And one day, when the truth surfaced, it would be impossible to look away. College changed my son, or maybe it just revealed who he was becoming. His calls grew shorter. His visits stopped. When I asked how classes were going, he answered like he was talking to a stranger, not a father. "I'm busy," he'd say. "I'll call later." Later rarely came. One evening, I finally visited the campus. I stood outside the tall glass building, watching students laugh and take selfies. Everyone looked confident, polished, like they belonged. I didn't. I waited near the gate for almost an hour before I saw him. He was walking with a girl, well-dressed, confident, her hand resting easily on his arm. I smiled. I felt proud. I stepped forward and called his name. He stopped, but didn't smile. His eyes flicked to the girl, then back to me. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I just wanted to see you," I said, "and maybe have tea." The girl looked at me, then at him, curious. "This is my dad," he said quickly, then added, "He works nearby." Not my father, not the man who raised me, just someone who worked nearby. The girl nodded politely, already looking away. I tried to hand him a small packet of homemade food, his favorite. He hesitated, then whispered sharply, "Not here." I felt the ground shift under my feet. "I'll call you," he said, taking the food without meeting my eyes. "Don't come again without telling me." as he walked away, I noticed something else. The watch on his wrist. Expensive. New. That night, I checked my bank account. A large withdrawal, one I didn't make. I remembered signing papers months earlier, documents he'd asked me to trust him with. Just scholarship forms, he'd said. That was the moment I understood. My son wasn't just hiding me anymore. He was using me. And still, I said nothing, because fathers don't stop loving their children, even when the truth hurts more than silence. I found out the truth by accident. A brown envelope arrived at my door one morning, stamped "Final Notice." I thought it was a mistake. I hadn't taken any loan. I lived simply. I owed no one. Or so I believed. Inside were bank statements, legal terms, and one line that made my knees give way. Cosigner. Father. The loan amount was more than I'd earned in 3 years. My hands shook as I called him. He answered on the 4th ring, annoyed. "What is it now?" "I got a letter," I said carefully, "about a loan." Silence. Then a sigh. "I was going to tell you." "When?" I asked. "After I settled," he said. "Why are you making this a big issue?" "A big issue?" "I trusted you," I said. My voice cracked before I could stop it. "You didn't read the papers," he replied flatly. "That's not my fault." Something inside me went cold. "I needed the money," he continued. "Everyone else has help. I can't look poor in front of them." Poor. That word hung between us like an accusation. "So you used me?" I asked. "You're my father," he snapped. "What else are you for?" The line went dead. I sat on the floor for a long time, staring at the wall where his childhood height marks still faded in pencil. The boy I once lifted onto my shoulders had just pushed me to the ground. I paid the loan, sold what little I had left, took extra work, hid the truth from everyone. And when the wedding invitation never came, I told myself it was fine, because I had already learned the lesson. Some children don't abandon their parents loudly. They do it quietly, with signatures, silence, and a smile. The wedding happened without me. That morning, I woke up before sunrise out of habit. The house was quiet. No phone calls, no messages. Just the ceiling fan humming above me like it always had. I made tea for one. At exactly 10:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A video file. I almost didn't open it. The first image was the wedding hall. Bright, expensive, perfect. My son stood at the altar, smiling like nothing had ever been broken. Guests clapped, music swelled. Then the camera shifted. I recognized the man holding it immediately, the groom's best man. I'd met him once, years ago, when he'd come to our house looking for help with paperwork. He'd been quiet, respectful. I hadn't known then who he really was. The video zoomed in on the microphone as my son's mother-in-law leaned forward, laughing softly. "Some people don't get invited," she said, "because they don't belong in a better life." Laughter followed. Not everyone, but enough. My stomach turned. Then silence. Long, uncomfortable. The best man stepped forward. "I think," he said calmly, "we should hear from someone who does belong." He signaled to the DJ. The screen behind them lit up. Footage, documents, transfers, dates, my name. The room changed in seconds. Whispers turned sharp. Smiles faded. My son looked around like the ground was moving beneath him. The woman's face froze, caught between confusion and fear. The best man spoke again, louder now. "This wedding exists because of one man who was never invited." The video ended there. I stared at my phone, heart pounding. Then a message appeared beneath it. My phone rang minutes later. It was my son. I stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. Then it rang again. I answered on the third call. "Why did you do this?" he demanded. His voice was shaking. Do you have any idea what you've ruined? I didn't send the video, I said calmly. I wasn't even there. Silence. Then, softer, they're all looking at me. Good, I thought, for once. I was going to invite you, he said quickly. Things just got complicated. Complicated, I repeated. His voice dropped. Do you know how hard it is to build a new life, to leave the past behind? So I became the past, I said. He didn't answer. What he didn't know, what no one at that wedding knew, was that the best man wasn't acting alone. Years earlier, when my son asked me to co-sign that loan, the bank manager had noticed something wrong. The signatures didn't match. The terms were altered. The manager had warned me quietly. Be careful, he'd said. This could become serious. I'd asked him to keep copies of everything, all of it. I didn't plan revenge, I planned survival. Back on the call, my son whispered, "Please, make it stop." I looked at the faded wall in front of me, the height marks, the memories. I protected you your whole life, I said. This is me protecting myself. The call ended. At the wedding hall, the best man was still standing at the microphone, and he was about to say who he really was. The best man raised his hand, and the room slowly went quiet. He looked at my son first, not with anger, but with disappointment. Then he turned to the guests. I should introduce myself properly, he said. A few people laughed nervously. Someone whispered, "What is happening?" He continued, steady and clear. My name isn't just the groom's best friend. I'm a legal investigator. Gasps rippled across the hall. My son's mother-in-law gripped the edge of her chair. Her confidence cracked. The best man tapped the screen again. New documents appeared. Loan forms, altered signatures, email trails. What I found was elder financial abuse. The word abuse landed hard. My son stood up suddenly. This is a misunderstanding, he said loudly. My father agreed to everything. The investigator nodded. He agreed to help his child. He did not agree to be deceived. Silence. Then a woman in the front row, one of the bride's relatives, stood and asked, "So, you're saying he stole from his own father?" No one answered. They didn't need to. My son sat back down slowly, his face burning. The woman who had mocked me earlier couldn't meet anyone's eyes now. Her hands trembled in her lap. The investigator ended with one sentence. Respect doesn't come from money. It comes from what you don't take. The video cut. At home, I felt something strange. Relief. But it wasn't over. Because while the room had turned against my son, the final truth, the one I had never told anyone, was still waiting. The final message came late that night. Not a video, a photo. It was an old document, yellowed at the edges, stamped, official. My name wasn't just on it as a co-signer. It listed me as the original owner of a small manufacturing unit, the same company that now sponsored half the wedding. The same company my son proudly told people he had helped build from nothing. What no one knew was this. Years ago, when the business was failing, I transferred ownership quietly so my son could take credit, take loans, and take opportunities I never had. I stayed in the shadows on purpose. The best man, now revealed as an investigator, had found the records. That was the secret. I wasn't just the man who paid, I was the man who built. The next morning, my son came to my door. No suit, no confidence. Just a boy again. He didn't defend himself. He didn't explain. He just said, "I forgot who you were." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, "I never did." Some wounds don't heal with apologies. Some lessons come too late. But that day, for the first time in years, I stood tall, not because others saw me, but because I finally stopped hiding myself. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real stories about family, sacrifice, and truth. Share this with someone who believes parents should never be forgotten.